Welcome to the deep dive. Ever notice how some people just, well, seem to command a room when they speak?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just loudness, is it? Their ideas just seem to land differently.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we're digging into today, those techniques behind really impactful speaking.
Right, how to sound genuinely convincing, how to maybe steer conversations a bit, all without leaning on notes.
And if you've ever felt, that your points are good, but maybe they're not hitting home,
Or you get put on the spot and struggle to get your thoughts out clearly,
then this is definitely for you. We're pulling strategies from advanced speaking skills, C1 level stuff, and also the world of formal debate.
particularly the Oxford Union style you mentioned.
That's the one. They're famous for persuasive, structured argument.
Okay, so the mission today, move beyond just being fluent, move towards actually taking command.
Let's do it.
All right, so first things first. This idea of C1 speaking being different. What's the core difference? It's not just sounding smooth, right?
No, not at all. Fluency is foundational, obviously.
Uh-huh.
But at this higher level, it really comes down to control.
Control, okay.
Yeah. C1 speakers don't just sort of drift along in a conversation, they actively shape it, they direct it.
Shaping it. So how does that actually look? What are the signs of this kind of control beyond just good grammar and vocab?
Well, one big one is signposting.
Signposting, like road signs.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like giving your listener a mental map. You clearly signal where you're going with your argument.
So they can follow along easily.
Exactly. So instead of just launching into a complex point, you might say something like, to problematize that a bit.
Which basically means,
Let's look at the tricky parts, or here's a counter angle. It tells the listener, okay, we're shifting perspective now, it's clear.
got it. Gives them those little flags along the way. What else marks this level?
Strategic pauses. This is a big one.
Okay, not the awkward pauses when you forget your point.
Definitely not. These are deliberate. Using silence for emphasis, letting a point sink in.
Like a punctuation mark in speech.
Precisely. Or even to sort of subtly regain control if the conversation drifts. It's a tool, not a sign of panic.
Makes sense. And you also mentioned lexical precision, word choice.
Yes. Choosing words very carefully for maximum impact and accuracy. Moving beyond, general terms.
Like instead of just saying something is bad.
Right. You might say it's short-sighted, it carries a much sharper, more specific meaning. Or instead of good, maybe empirically sound.
Empirically sound. Okay, that instantly grounds it in evidence.
Exactly. It adds weight and credibility.
So for people listening who want to work on this, how can they practice this lexical precision?
There's a great little self-test you can do. Record yourself.
Oh, brave step.
Yeah, it can be. But record yourself arguing a point, maybe something simple like, social media is bad for creativity.
Okay.
Then listen back, specifically hunting for those vague words like very, really good, bad.
The fillers that don't add much meaning?
Right. The goal is to spot them and then think, okay, what's a stronger, more precise word I could have used here? It's about refining that vocabulary.
I like that. A practical way to upgrade your language.
Sure.
Okay, so refining the words is one thing, but then putting them together.
Structure.
Right. That brings us to the Oxford Union framework you mentioned earlier. What's the big idea there?
The core principle is simple, really.
Mm-hmm.
Structure often wins over volume or just passion.
Okay.
In debates, in meetings, wherever you need to persuade, a clear, logical structure makes your argument easier to follow, harder to dismiss.
So what does this structure look like? What are the parts?
It boils down to three key bits: claim, warrant, impact.
Claim, warrant, impacts. Okay.
First, the claim. State your main point, clearly, concisely. You might lead with something like, the data overwhelmingly suggests.
Sets a confident tone right away. Claim. Then what?
Then the warrant. This is crucial. It's the why.
The evidence, the reasoning.
Exactly. Why is your claim true? You'd follow up with, this is because peer-reviewed studies show, or the underlying mechanism involves. You're backing it up.
Got it. Claim, warrant. And the third part.
Impact. So what? Why does this matter?
The relevance piece.
Yeah. Explain the significance, the consequences you might finish with, and without intervention this is likely to lead to, or the broader implication here is.
So connects the dots for the listener, makes it feel important.
Claim, warrant, impact.
Yeah.
It's logical, memorable.
It really is. Can we see this in action? You mentioned analyzing speakers.
Oh, absolutely. Think about, say, A well-known speaker like Yuval Noah Harari in a TED Talk.
Okay.
Watch how he often starts. He'll make a big, often historical claim. That's the claim.
Right.
Then he'll bring in research, historical examples. That's the warrant.
The backing.
And then he explores the, huge implications for humanity or the future. That's the impact. It might not be explicitly labeled, but that structure is often there guiding the audience.
That's a great way to think about it. Start noticing it in speakers you admire.
Definitely. Once you see it, you can start using it yourself.
Okay, powerful arguments need structure. But sometimes you need to be a bit more flexible, right? Especially when opinions differ.
Absolutely. And that brings us to strategic hedging.
Hedging? Sounds like you're avoiding commitment.
It can sound like that, but used strategically, it's about balancing confidence with open-mindedness.
Okay, so sounding knowledgeable but not, totally rigid.
Exactly. Acknowledging nuance. It makes you sound more considered, actually.
So how do we do this? What kind of phrases help?
Well, you can think about softening phrases first. They make statements less absolute.
Less black and white.
Right. So instead of "you're wrong" or "that will fail," maybe something like "it could be argued that," or "one potential challenge with that approach is."
Much gentler. Still makes the point, though.
Then there's conceding, acknowledging valid points from the other side.
Even if you disagree overall.
Especially then. It shows you're listening and thinking critically. You could say, well, I take your point on X, the issue of Y still seems critical, or I see where you're coming from with Z, however.
So you give a little ground, but hold your main position.
Precisely. And the third one is deflecting.
Okay, this one sounds trickier. Are we just dodging?
Not necessarily dodging the topic, but maybe redirecting a point that's becoming aggressive or unproductive. Gently steering it back.
How would that sound?
Maybe someone makes a really pointed comment. You could say, that's a fascinating interpretation.
There.
The emphasis on fascinating can subtly signal, okay, I hear you, but let's maybe not go down that rabbit hole.
Polite disagreement or redirection.
It's about managing the conversation's tone and focus.
Could you give us a quick scenario? Maybe a tricky topic?
Sure. Let's say the topic is universities are becoming obsolete. Pretty controversial.
Okay.
Someone says they absolutely are. Waste of money. You could soften by saying, well, it seems the value proposition of traditional universities is being questioned more. If they raise a good point about online learning being cheaper, you could concede. While the accessibility of online options is definitely a huge advantage, there are perhaps still unique benefits to the campus experience.
Acknowledging their point, but adding nuance.
And if they try to frame it as universities, good or bad, you could deflect slightly. That's an interesting binary, though I suspect the reality is probably a lot more complex, with different models serving different needs.
Using that hedging language to keep the conversation constructive. Very useful.
It's all about navigating those potentially choppy waters smoothly.
Right. Now, to get really good at this, it seems like you need to be able to think quickly and see multiple sides of an issue.
Exactly. Which leads nicely into an exercise I really like, the devil's advocate drill.
Devil's advocate. Sounds fun. What's the purpose?
It's all about building mental flexibility, training yourself to argue any side of an issue, even one you strongly disagree with.
Why is that helpful?
It deepens your understanding massively. You start seeing the potential counterarguments before they even come up. Makes you much more prepared and adaptable.
Okay, so how does the drill actually work?
It's pretty simple. Pick a controversial statement. Let's say, AI should have human rights.
Whoa, okay. Big one.
Then you set a timer for 60 seconds and you argue for it. Make the best case you possibly can in that minute.
All right. Find the supporting arguments.
Then immediately after, reset the timer for 60 seconds and argue against it. Just flip completely.
Wow, okay. That sounds like mental gymnastics.
It is, but it really sharpens your ability to think on your feet and construct arguments quickly from different viewpoints.
Any tips for doing this effectively?
Record yourself doing it.
Again with the recording.
Yes. Listen back and notice. Does your tone shift convincingly? Do you sound genuinely persuasive on both sides?
So it's not just the logic, but the delivery, the
No.
conviction.
Exactly. See when speakers can perform conviction. They can make a case sound compelling, even if it's not their personal belief. This drill helps you practice that performance aspect.
That's a fascinating insight, performing conviction. Okay, so we've got structure, hedging, mental flexibility. But what happens when someone throws a really tough, maybe even hostile question at you?
Yeah, that happens. It's crucial to be able to spot the common traps and know how to respond calmly.
That's a common trap.
One is the "yes, but what about?" question. Someone tries to derail your whole argument with one specific counterexample.
Right, the exception they think proves you wrong.
Exactly. The key is not to get stuck defending against just that one example. Acknowledge it briefly, but then pivot back.
Ow.
You could say something like, that's an interesting case, and to really understand it, we need to look at the broader context, which shows. See? You acknowledge, then broaden the scope back to your main argument.
Nice. Don't get trapped in the weeds. What about the source question? That can feel like a pop quiz.
It can. And look, sometimes you won't recall the exact study name or year off the top of your head. That's okay.
So what do?
You reference the type of evidence. You could say, that's based on findings from several meta-analyses published around 2023. Or, I'm drawing on peer-reviewed research in developmental psychology that indicates.
So you show it's evidence-based even without the exact citation. Smart.
It shows you're informed, even if you don't have photographic recall.
Okay, and the worst case. What if the question feels like a personal attack?
If it shifts from the issue to you personally, the best defense is a calm redirect.
Oh.
Firmly but politely steer it back to the substance. Phrases like, I'd prefer we focus on the merits of the argument itself, or let's keep the discussion centered on the systemic issues here.
Deflect the personal aspect, refocus on the topic.
Exactly. Don't take the bait and get drawn into a personal squabble. Maintain professionalism.
These are great escape hatches. You mentioned a really concise example from an IELTS test earlier.
Oh yeah, that was a good one. The examiner threw out a challenge. Isn't your view unrealistic if we consider Scandinavia's model? Kind of a classic, what about trap?
Okay. How did the speaker respond?
Brilliantly concise. They just said, not if we consider Scandinavia's model.
Oh. That's it.
That was it. Short, confident. It instantly turned the tables, implying that the examiner's example actually supported the speaker's point, suggesting they hadn't fully considered it.
That takes guts, but very effective. It shows deep understanding.
It really does. A masterclass in handling a challenge directly and efficiently.
Okay, this has been incredibly insightful. As we wrap up this deep dive, what's the main action you want listeners to take away?
Become an observer. Start actively listening for these techniques out in the world.
How?
Find a debate on YouTube. It could be serious politics or, something silly like pineapple on pizza. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Watch it, but listen specifically for signposting. Notice how speakers try to guide you. Look for that claim warrant impact structure, listen for hedging words, watch how they handle tough questions.
Just start tuning your ear to it.
Exactly. Once you can spot it, it's much easier to start incorporating it yourself.
And beyond just noticing it in others.
Think about where you can apply these ideas. Your work meetings, presentations, even just discussions with friends or family. How can structuring your points better or using careful hedging make your communication more effective?
It really is a skill that applies almost everywhere.
Absolutely. Being able to articulate your ideas clearly, persuasively, confidently, that's valuable in pretty much any area of life.
Definitely. So a final thought to leave everyone with.
Yeah. Remember, arguing well isn't really about, winning a fight or shutting someone down.
It's not combat.
No, think of it more like a sport of ideas, where the goal is clarity, good structure, and strategic communication. It's about engaging constructively.
A sport of ideas. I like that.
So maybe the question to ponder is, after thinking about all this, what perspectives or ideas do you now feel better equipped to explore and articulate?